If you think you have nothing else to be thankful for, just kneel down and be grateful for one thing. If you have a lot of problems, surely avoiding predators isn't one of them. Since the time of the cavemen, we've been afraid of these creatures. Just seeing one means that many have come before you, and they didn't make it. But for most people, it's not just about what they can do, but how they do it. Today, here are the top 10 most dangerous animals that hunt humans. But before we start, if you're new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. There are many things to be afraid of if you end up alone on an island. Thirst, heat, cold, and hunger. But you rarely think about being eaten by crabs. And why is that? Because aside from a few remote islands in the Indian and Pacific Oceans, the coconut crab is something you only see in a bad trip or a nightmare. Despite their name, coconuts are almost meaningless in the real diet of this steroid version of the hermit crab. But that didn't stop nature from giving them claws that can slice open coconuts. Actually, their other name, the robber crab, fits them better. Because they'll wreck your camp and steal anything that's not nailed down. The problem is, that's also how they hunt. In 2016, scientists actually saw a coconut crab climb a tree and attack a sleeping bird. It broke the bird's wing and they both fell to the ground, but the crab didn't let go. Within minutes, other crabs arrived and together they tore apart the nearly lifeless bird for several hours. The scabbing scavenger causes blood loss, and once one starts on you, the others are sure to follow. And because they can climb and follow the scent of injury, nowhere on the island is truly safe. No matter where you hide, they will really find you. They're not picky. They can strip rats, cats, even whole pigs. But the most terrifying are the stories of coconut crabs eating humans. There's a frightening story from the 82-day Battle of Okinawa, where Japanese soldiers reportedly saw these giant crabs digging through the remains of their comrades. There's no clear evidence if it was really coconut crabs, but if you imagine it, that's exactly how they behave. Just imagine a group of armored cockroaches carrying a hydraulic press, and if you get caught between their claws, you know what happens next. And because of their diet, most coconut crabs are poisonous to eat. But the scariest theory is that a coconut crab might have eaten Amelia Earhart. It's terrifying because even if she was already gone when they got there or was injured from the plane crash, the crabs would still react the same way. And if you think about it, someone might have spent the last moments of their life crawling away while dozens of crabs slowly approached and lined up for hours. Most people aren't afraid of the darkness itself, but of what's inside it. It's the same with the sea, but there are only a few things to be afraid of in the sky. Maybe it's because we think we'll see if something is coming. And that's why the Harpy eagle is at number... Because if this is your predator, you'll never have peace. They are one of the largest eagles in the world, but what truly sets them apart is their short but very wide wings, which means they can chase you inside the forest, weaving between trees, something that no other eagle should be able to do. Just imagine a demonic hippogriff suddenly entering your house and taking your sibling from the bed. That's the kind of generational trauma experienced by the monkeys they decided to eat. And their claws are as big and wide as greased liver, with a grip as strong as a Rottweiler's bite. You can literally hear the bones breaking from their last meal as the harpy slowly crushes it in its grip. And imagine if those claws, strong enough to crush an armadillo, grabbed your head. There are rare but real cases of harpy eagles attacking humans. And there are times when you actually have to cut off the eagle's foot because even after it's dead, its talons won't let go. In 2023 in French Guiana, a tourist was approached by a harpy eagle that suddenly attacked and dug its claws into the woman's scalp, leaving her with deep wounds. The idea of being attacked by a prehistoric version of Freddy Krueger with wings is enough to make your chest hurt, but they rarely attack people, and it's usually the person's fault. It's easy to call Australia Satan's own sandbox, but the true uniqueness of the Amazon doesn't get enough respect. Jaguar's favorite hunting season is called Skull Crusher, and that's where the problems begin. There's the anaconda that looks like it came straight out of Jurassic Park, a fish that uses electricity as a weapon. and another species that convinces thousands of people never to pee in the river. And even so, the real apex predator of the Amazon isn't actually the jaguar. In fact, the giant river otter is sometimes called the ararana or water jaguar. But because of its behavior and its tendency for gang violence, it's more fitting to call it a crazy water wolf. Because of their group tactics, they can make a jaguar back off like reavers without a key. And if that's not enough, imagine this hyped-up Malaroid reaching up to 6 feet long and usually roaming around in packs. They're apex predators that usually eat fish, but they can crush crustaceans, anacondas, and even other otters. Even the rivers adjust their course just to avoid the group of otters that look terrifying. But you won't really understand their power until you see how they treat the caiman. Caiman. They will all gang up on the caiman and exhaust it while fighting until it literally gets paralyzed because of the buildup of too much acid in its muscles. And that's when they start tearing it apart little by little while it's still alive, along with their sounds that are like the rugrats set in purgatory. And just imagine if it's your first time hearing that without knowing what giant river otters are. The worst part is that there's proof that the same hunting tactic is tragically effective even on humans. Silvio Delmar Hollenbach, a Brazilian army sergeant, took his family to the Brazilian zoo. During this time, an incident happened where a 13-year-old fell inside the enclosure. He was immediately driven by instinct and said before jumping in and carrying the injured child out, "Don't stop me!" But in exchange, he became the target of the otter family's anger. The group dragged him back into the water and attacked him right in front of his own family. He was pulled out, but he already had over 100 bite wounds and a lot of water, which caused a severe infection that took his life. Silvio was mourned and regarded as a hero except by the child he saved, who didn't even thank him. What's even worse is that in 2016, the same child was arrested for a scam involving millions of pensioners' money. And it's proof that sometimes being a hero means saving a villain. Being mauled by water wolverines while being waterboarded at the same time is truly one of the most painful ways to be killed. But it's really rare for someone to reach the otter, and in Silvio's case, his chances should have been 0 if it weren't for the fact that the otter group had just given birth to a new pup. And next up, you really wouldn't think this belongs on this list until you remember that it's one of the few animals that's not just a victim, but also a predator hunter. The Cape buffalo, also known as the Black Death, is one of the deadliest animals you could ever chase because it's among the top 5 most vengeful and unforgiving creatures in the world. It's a big misconception that the lion's biggest enemy is the hyena. When you have a 1,200-pound beast that can make a big cat back off, that's a whole different story. That's why the Cape buffalo is at number 7. Because if an ordinary cow is already dangerous, what more if it's the version that's angry at the world? When the so-called widowmaker tastes death, it will probably make sure to take someone else down with it before it falls. It can drive away lions as if they're just annoying pests. And sometimes it even follows lion cubs just to trample and crush them. And imagine they can also call a super herd with more than several thousand members. This is where you'll understand why there's a possibility for a lion to become a full-time carpet if it picks the wrong target. And this isn't just a scary story. For hundreds of years, this animal has been gored, stabbed, and killed by people. This is the first entry with an impressive, or should I say terrifying, body count. The problem is every year there are people who hunt them, not knowing that the buffalo also hunts. When it's injured, it will run to the tall grass, hide, and wait for you to come closer. And when you turn your back, that's when it strikes. It will charge at you, ram you repeatedly, and won't stop until you can't get up anymore. Imagine you're running in zigzags, and with just one wrong turn, the buffalo suddenly delivers you to the Lord. Same-day shipping, like Amazon Prime for the afterlife. And while other herbivores would just watch as a predator finishes you off, or sometimes they're even the reason for your death, the Cape buffalo is different. They'll come back for whoever tries to take them down, like thousands of versions of John Wick. There are really people who don't believe it, until they get connected to heaven's Wi-Fi, like Ashel Watkins, a trophy hunter from Texas who thought he could handle it. But when his target attacked him first, that was it. He was hit by a buffalo going almost 35 miles per hour. His chest and stomach were ripped open, and he lost his life before he could even reach the hospital. It's a sad ending, but you can't say there was no reason for it. On some islands in Indonesia, there are still real dinosaurs left. This is the Komodo dragon, and if they choose to hunt you, the fight is over. The Komodo is like a mix between a coconut crab and Jurassic Park. They will eat anything, even their fellow dragons. They even dig up human graves to eat old corpses. As an apex predator with only a few successful hunts each year, if you become their priority, you should be ready for days of being chased by a demon-like monitor lizard. In 2008-05, scuba divers were swept away by a riptide. They spent almost a whole day floating in the ocean. They ended up on Rinka Island, where for 5 days they played a game of cat and mouse with a Komodo dragon that spotted them and started following them non-stop. And it was even harder because there was a problem. Back then, we thought the Komodo was just a one-bite specialist, the kind that bites you once, then just waits for you to die from the infection. The hard truth is, it's even scarier than we thought. The Komodo dragon doesn't just let its victim escape, but if you do manage to get away, they have a plan B. They can track you using the scent of your blood, while their venom contains an anticoagulant that keeps you bleeding. That means your situation will be like a broken game of hide and seek. And since the island is as big as Philadelphia, there's really no corner there where they can't smell or track you. The longer you avoid the dragon, the worse it gets because more of them show up when you're already in trouble. The Komodo dragon's blood sense is no joke. That's why women who, are advised not to go. Because the Komodo dragons might mistake them for weak or dying animals, like a walking garbage disposal. There are even stories of tourists hiding their injuries from the tour guides just so their trip won't get canceled. But this led to a situation where they were swarmed by a lot of dragons from different parts of the island. And if you're thinking that an animal like that probably can't catch me, millions of years of evolution have proven that they can. There's another incident that proves this. 2 Komodos were quietly following a fruit picker from under a tree. When Muhammad Anur slipped and fell, the 2 beasts immediately charged and killed him with a violent attack. And you might think I'm giving them too much credit. But maybe you haven't heard the cry of a young goat coming from inside a Komodo dragon. Honestly, I have to say that I don't even have the words to describe how terrified I am of the ocean. And the animal that's truly terrifying isn't a shark, not an orca, not a giant squid. But yes, it's a strange kind of squid. You'd really rather swim naked around a great white than encounter a Humboldt squid in the wild. These creatures can grow up to 6 feet long, and they're not even the biggest ones. But the way they hunt, that's a nightmare you really can't handle. Once they've locked onto a target, they'll stretch out all 10 tentacles to rip the victim's flesh and force it into their powerful beak. And it's not just any beak, it can crush through skin and even cut through chainmail. They move so quickly that in a single camera frame, they've already pulled their prey into their mouths. They also have 2 special tentacles with suckers that have hidden teeth, perfect for gripping. But the real reason why they're on the top danger list is how they catch you. They're like something straight out of Stephen King's imagination. Because the Humboldt sometimes hunts in groups of thousands. They're extremely aggressive, like hungry piranhas with tentacles, and they can strip a fish down to the bone before a fisherman can even pull up their lines. And they don't hesitate to devour their own kind. If one in the group reacts slowly or becomes weak, their own group will suddenly swarm and attack them. The problem with these squids is that they live too fast. It's like they're always in hyper mode, so all they think about is food 24/7. So if you're unlucky and you're in the sea at the wrong time, it's like you're surrounded by countless tentacles, all meant for slicing and scraping flesh. But that's not the worst part. Their greatest weapon is their intelligence. Because they're not just aggressive, sometimes they're curious. They even steal cameras and lights just to study them, take them apart, and slice them up. But what's even scarier is that the Humboldt squid can change its mood from, "Oh, what's that?" to "attack that" in just a few seconds. In the darkness of the sea, they communicate by quickly flashing red across their bodies. So when one gives a signal, many others will follow. One example of this is a diver who was approached by a squid that seemed gentle, just nibbling a little. The diver thought he was lucky and even took a video, but after just a few seconds, the squid's body flashed red, and suddenly many others rushed in and pulled him down into the depths. He managed to escape, but he was convinced that his ticket to the afterlife had already been booked. There are many more stories of divers who were almost dragged to the point of no return, and some even say that something tried to pull off their masks and drown them. But the scariest part was when the diver stopped fighting. When he became an easy target, that's when he became a big red light signal to all the Humboldt squid nearby. What's even scarier is that during the day, these squids rise from the depths to hunt, before returning to the pitch black sea where even more things happen that we can't see. Many claim few animals intentionally hunt humans, with the polar bear being one of them. But let's be clear, they don't actively hunt humans, they just really don't care. The polar bear is the largest predator on land, and no matter how big you think they are, they're even bigger than your imagination. The problem is, they're the only bear that's a hypercarnivore, which means they only want meat. And that meat can be anything, as long as it moves. But what's even worse is that the polar bear lives in a frozen desert where, during winter, their choices are poop, Arctic foxes, or their fellow polar bears that have died. That's why they don't actively hunt humans. They have the best sense of smell among all predators, allowing them to smell a seal from miles away. They can detect a seal's breathing hole from a different area code, and they can even smell a seal buried under a foot of ice. That's why it's true that if a polar bear sees you, it's already too late. From 1870 to 2014, there have only been 73 recorded attacks, and 20 of those were fatal. But the idea that you're the target of a predator that never gives up, that's a whole different level of fear. In 2016, 5 Russian scientists were literally held hostage by more than 10 polar bears. Day and night, they were waiting outside the weather station, so food and flares had to be airdropped by helicopter. In 2019, up to 50 polar bears entered the homes in Novaya Zemlya. They declared a state of emergency. No one went outside, children weren't allowed to go to school, and because the bears couldn't be attacked, people were defenseless as the bears entered their homes as if no humans lived there. A polar bear is like a natural disaster. You can't stop it. And they're here at number 4 because if they choose you, there's no running fast enough and no distance from the sea that can save you. But what's most disturbing is that they're like relatives of the humble squid. They're extremely intelligent and very curious. In the videos, you'll see that when they approach people, they're silent and expressionless, as if deep in thought. The polar bear is getting closer and closer to you. It could be curious, it could be nothing, or it could be ready to take you out of this world. But there's no way for you to know which one it is. And that's what's scary. They don't make any noise. They don't give any warning. They know a lot, but they don't show anything. It's like nature deliberately made an animal so deadpan, able to decide whether you live or die without even making a sound. Most attacks by black bears and brown bears are defensive, meaning they have cubs nearby or you startled them, and usually they give a lot of warning signs before they attack you, as if they're telling you that you're crossing the line. But the polar bear, there's no negotiation. They don't communicate. They don't show anger or fear, and usually they're just sizing you up to see if you're worth eating. So their cute faces, their appearance that looks like a stuffed toy, that's not innocence, that's not being cold. It's emotionless and like a Terminator. And you should remember that they're not afraid of people, unlike their cousins, the brown and black bears. And almost every encounter with them happens on their terms, not yours. That's why this survival rule is true. If it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lie down and play dead. If it's white, you really have no hope. They say numbers 3 and 2 are interchangeable depending on which kind of horror scares you more. And if you like slasher films, here it is. What's funny but horrifying is that less than 5% of Jim's diet is meat. But in places like Uganda, they reach almost an 80% success rate when hunting. The reason is their style is like a coordinated kill squad. There are drivers who chase the prey to pressure them up into the trees. And if you slip up and get caught, there are blockers waiting to intercept you and limit where you can run. Up above, there are chasers like ninjas who will pursue you through the branches. And worst of all, there are ambushers waiting for you in the places where you're most likely to escape. And when you get cornered, they break you, tear you apart, and slice you up alive. I can't describe the scene anymore, but imagine being a living monkey. Clinging, crying, then they broke its arm after everything. And really, animals aren't their only targets. There are cases of chimpanzees ambushing gorilla families. They attack the silverback, distract the females, then take the infants to kill them. And because human settlements and chimpanzee territories are overlapping, child abductions have increased, and sometimes they're very severe. A toddler was snatched by a large male chimp, and it happened in just a few minutes. The arm was broken, the head was injured, the abdomen was damaged, and the kidney was removed. Being bullied by a chimp is like a death game, where your enemies are parkour zombies. They're smart, fast, and truly merciless. It's a good thing that meat isn't the main food of chimps yet, so attacks are rare, and because of that, the tiger comes in at number 2. Tigers don't really actively look for humans, but because we've been sharing habitats for centuries, they now account for what's the highest number of human deaths on this entire list. In the old days, people used to wear masks on the back of their heads so that the tiger would think it couldn't catch them by surprise. It was said to be effective until it was used too much, and now it seems even the tigers themselves have caught on. But their intelligence isn't even the scariest thing about them. The real reason why they're number 2 is that they're the most vengeful animals on the planet. If you go against a tiger, you might not even make it to the start. This one is actually a famous story. A poacher attacked a tiger and even took its last meal. What the tiger did was chase him all the way to his hut, destroyed everything with the poacher's scent, even his bed, just to get revenge when the man returned. That's John Wick style, but with stripes. Tatiana the tiger from the San Francisco Zoo also proved that you don't need to be in the jungle to get caught off guard. She escaped from her enclosure, looked for the men who harassed her, and took them down one by one. But the most feared of all is the devil of Champawat, a Bengal tiger, a female tiger whose tooth was damaged, most likely because of humans. She could no longer hunt her normal prey, so humans became her target. And the result? She claimed the lives of 436 people. She evaded poachers and hunting parties and seemed to always know when to hide and move to another place. This tiger was really fast, silent, and precise. She will finish you off. Then, it's like they disappear into the darkness like ghosts. What's worse, the tiger could be even scarier than it is now. The reason why they're orange is because most of their prey can't recognize the color orange. For animals, they look green, which is perfect for camouflage. And if you were their prey, this is what the biggest, furriest, grim reaper in the world would look like. And even with all of that, they're still not number 1. The true king of the ocean is the orca, the most influential and most oppressive predator on the entire planet. You may know orcas are smart, but few realize they're also very cautious to avoid injury. If there's even the slightest chance that the prey could fight back, they'll avoid it. They won't make a move until they're sure there's zero risk. Their approach really depends on the target. They can flip a stingray before it can sting. They can immobilize a shark before it can bite. They can prevent any attack before it happens. And they can toss a seal into the air like they're in Super Smash Bros. And what's worse, they're not just after food. They use the dying animal as a training dummy to teach the whole pod how to deal with this kind of prey. In one video, you can clearly see them passing the stingray around. Not because they're being cruel, but because it's a lesson. When the lesson is over, they just let it sink. No anger, no mercy, just calculation. And if you're still not convinced, here's a story you won't forget. A grandmother orca literally memorized the breeding season of the elephant seals in the Falklands. She knows the day, the time, and the exact water level needed for her to enter the nursery pool. When the right tide comes, she emerges from the waves like a monster and snatches the seal pup. Not to eat it, but to torment it and use it as practice material. For hours, they played with it, spun it around, tossed it, and made it experience utter hopelessness, and for almost the entire time, the pup was still alive. This act is not cruelty for them. It is training and survival. But if you are the prey, this is one of the most hopeless ways to be killed. That's why even the great white shark disappears for an entire year when they see orcas in their hunting ground. And even humpback whales automatically go on alert mode when orcas are around. These are animals that practice swimming, diving, and killing their own kind before doing it to real victims, including baby blue whales. Orcas aren't evil, but for the victim, it's like being locked in an underwater horror movie. But I really need to clarify something. They are not the most oppressive predators in the world. Because if you take away weapons, technology, and all modern tools, the real scariest predator is humans. Imagine there's a creature you can never outrun. You can get ahead, you can hide, but when you look back, they're still there, not out of breath and never getting tired. If you're thirsty, exhausted, and about to give up from the heat, it's like they're just getting started. And they're like monsters with infinite stamina. While you're running, you're slowly burning out. But they just keep going. They don't need to charge at you, they just chase you until your body gives out. Until you collapse on your own, not because of injury, but because of exhaustion. By morning, you're far from life, but they're ready again. Ready to conquer, to hunt, to keep going. As they approach while you're lying down, you no longer have the strength to stand. One swing of the weapon and your story is over. It's not your fault. There's no demon and no anger. This is just what happens when you encounter the deadliest predator in the history of the world. Humans.